Let's stay on the topic of Michigan here. This Michigan team, man, very good, very well developed too. I think that's one thing that I want to throw in here before we grade their new head coaching hire, Mr. Sherrone Moore. But one thing about the Harbaugh era that I loved about Jim Harbaugh, the guy freaking can develop football players, dude. Like Michigan, they did have a handful. They had, I think, 2 5-stars. They were one of the lowest rated teams in terms of blue chip ratio quality to win a national championship. Like they developed a lot of non 5-stars into that team. And I don't believe they never recruited inside the top 10 all years that Harbaugh was there. That was like the one knock on Harbaugh, is that he's getting Michigan inside like the top 15 in terms of recruiting, but they never got inside like the top 8, top 7, if I recall off the top of my head. I don't think they even had a top 10 class. I could be wrong there, but that's the one thing about him. 3 Big Ten championships in a row, 2 college football playoff appearances, or actually 3 college football playoff appearances, and then 1 national championship. Pretty good stint there for Jim Harbaugh's final 3 years. So now the new man, once Mr. Harbaugh decided he wanted to go to the LA Chargers and decided that, hey, who's got it better than him? Nobody in Los Angeles. Well, now Ann Arbor is missing a head coach. And they decided, you know what? We already have our guy. And I think we all knew this. Everybody knew that if Harbaugh was going to leave, this guy was going to get promoted. And that is Sherrone Moore. Sherrone Moore, now the new head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. This was announced officially the other day, actually. And we are here to grade this hire. So Xand, without further ado, what hire on a scale of F to A do you give Mr. Sherrone Moore?
So let me just start by saying this. Sherrone Moore being promoted to head coach is deserved. I think he's done his time there for sure. He been there for a few years. He started as the tight end coach, moved his way up, and he had success during Harbaugh's time being banned from Michigan football for all the allegations to start the season, and they still were very dominant without him. Granted, my one bugaboo about that is that it wasn't against the best of competition, and I feel like you could have thrown any assistant in that spot and they still would have dominated who they played. But regardless, Sherrone Moore has done his time in that program. He's very well respected, and I think he's a good coach. But with the powerhouse that Michigan is becoming, well, I should say they really have to look inward at the league itself. Oregon is bringing in Dan Lanning, who, by the way, Oregon is becoming they might become one of the next big giants over the next 10 years. The way they're recruiting, the way they're playing, the way Dan Lanning has that team trending, and they're coming to the Big Ten. Oregon's going to be a top 3 team in that league every single year. So Michigan, Ohio State, look out. It's going to be nuts. So when I look at Sherrone Moore, I think to myself, Sherrone Moore, you're a good coach, but are you a great coach? Jim Harbaugh is a great coach. He has proven pedigree. Everywhere he goes, he finds success. Even in the NFL, we go back to the Kaepernick Super Bowl. I mean, this guy had Colin Kaepernick as his freaking QB and went to the Super Bowl. So just think about how much of a quality coach Harbaugh is, even though he doesn't really get the credit for it. And he's gotten the criticism over the years when he was on that losing streak to Ohio State. But hey, they've wrote the ship. So my only concern here with Sherrone Moore is that it was a loyalty hire and perhaps not the best hire they could have made, given the circumstances and given the prestige of the program that Michigan is and the respect that they would command in the open market for coaches. And so because of that, and nothing against Sherrone Moore, I'm going to give this a solid B. I think this is a B head coach. I would give this grade a B. And look, I'm not saying that he's a bad coach. Because I think he's actually a pretty solid coach. But I think there was the potential to do better given the prestige of Michigan, especially coming off winning a natty and the money that they could have offered to potentially land someone big. So I will say a solid B, not a bad hire at all, but could have done better, I think.
Yeah, the latter of your point there is what's really key here. We're grading this hire. We're not grading the coach himself. We are grading the hire. So in terms of grading the hire, we have to take into account 2 things. 1, the actual coach himself, and 2, the process by which the university, the school, athletic department, etc., got to that hire. And I'm in complete agreement with you, man. Sherrone Moore himself, I'd say he's a pretty solid coach. Now, I think we can all agree, even Michigan fans, I think you all can agree, if you take some truth serum here, it's going to be a downgrade from Harbaugh. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is like literally one of the best coaches in all of football, not just NFL and college, like all of the sport of football. Like, he's top notch. And no matter like what you did, virtually you were going to downgrade from Harbaugh. So that's not fair to Sherrone Moore, because Sherrone Moore still is a pretty good coach. I mean, yeah, he did coach against some inferior competition, but I think that the point that matters is that he got experience just as a head coach, period, regardless of what the competition was. And it did seem like game management, I think was pretty solid. I would say nothing really you could take away extremely either way, positive or negatively there. So as far as a coach himself, I consider him a pretty solid coach. An elite coach? No, I mean, he's pretty unproven. But in terms of the process to get there, I'm in complete agreement with you, man. This is going to weigh down my grade here a little bit. I'm going to go with a B-. It's not a C. Now, it's definitely not a C, because Sherrone Moore is a pretty solid coach, but it's a B- for the same reasons you said. Mr. Kalen DeBoer, rumors were that Michigan was his dream job. Now, of course, like, are you going to go to Alabama if the Alabama job opens? Yeah, of course he is. But let me tell you something, man. If Mr. Nick Saban had decided to retire a little bit later, or if Jim Harbaugh had decided he wanted to leave for the NFL just a little bit earlier, and both Michigan and Alabama were open at the same time, rumors were Kalen DeBoer might have went to Michigan over Alabama. I'm just saying, that's the rumor. Now, that's all timing based, of course. Michigan can't really control that. And then secondly, I mean, rumors were Brian Kelly, if the Michigan job were open, he might have jumped ship from LSU, which sounds pretty crazy to me, if I'm to be honest, but like, that was the rumor mill. Is like, these are the types of names that they were in the mix for. Like, Michigan is an elite job, and a lot of people like consider Michigan like a top tier job in college football. It's got that pedigree. So yeah, now that's why I get to the B-. But man, you know what? I'd say it's pretty solid floor hire to have Sherrone Moore in-house to be able to just promote. It's a feel-good story and everything, but if it doesn't end up working out in a few years from now, if you're a Michigan fan, are you going to be kicking yourself like, oh man, you know, we went for the feel-good story, the easy, you know, in-house guy that definitely deserved it, but maybe we could have got somebody just a little bit better, a little bit more proven. Hopefully you're not kicking yourself in a few years, but let's hope that's not the case, because I would love to see Sherrone Moore work out there for Michigan. I mean, he 100% deserves it. That's without a doubt. So